Right, now live. How are we doing? Hello, Matthias. Right. So.
Hi, Matthias.
We got some people in now.
Is Matthias at the minute?
Well, I'm saying 4 viewers.
4 now.
Right.
Matthias is the only one that's saying hello.
Yeah, there'll be a bit of lag, so.
At the moment, it's okay.
So, I mean, it's been a busy week. We had Telford this weekend. I did manage to get there. Got to thank Angela for that, and my parents as well for driving us there. Had a good time. Pardon me. Saw lots of people. I believe some of you I might have seen. Apologies if I didn't appear to know you. If you are one of the people that came up and said hello and I just sort of stared at blankly, then chances are I just couldn't recognise who you were. Don't worry, because I do that with my own family, so it's not a personal thing. I got to see obviously the UMP guys and friends, I should say. Paul and Ivan and Andreas, Cy. Now I've mentioned 4, I'm obligated to go through all of them now, because if I miss one, I'm never going to hear the end of it. So I saw Graham. Dan, I saw Dan. It's nice to see him. Darn it. Dan. Okay, we'll work on that one. That'll be a work in progress. So, first off, last week's show, it was a bit of a pig's breakfast, really. Now, just to clarify once again, in case there's anyone new in here, I've never stated that I'm any sort of modeler other than an amateur, a novice. I do it for enjoyment. I do these for enjoyment. I'm just trying to spread what I learn and show what I learn. It's a way of charting my progress. I can look back on these videos in years to come and see how I progress. And so that's it. So obviously there's going to be mistakes made. Last week was a colossal one. I had a feeling it would be. I did say at the beginning of the show last week that it was an area I wasn't particularly good in. But I thought I'd researched it right, but I'd forgotten some of the things I'd researched and got them mixed up. So, to clarify, let me just grab one of these. Oh no, that's not a very good example, but to clarify, when you're struggling to get the wash off of the, when you put the wash down and you're taking it off and it isn't coming off, I'm reliably informed that is probably because the gloss coat is not good enough underneath. So, right, that's one correction there. So that needs to be make sure when you gloss everything that it's nice and smooth and shiny. In the rush that I was, I didn't knock it back and get it all smooth. I should have done. Now then, with the cotton buds, when I was wiping down the wash, you should never wipe along the seam, the panel line. You should always wipe at 90 degrees to the panel line or the seam, wherever it is you're putting the wash. Otherwise, you're just literally clearing the wash back out of where you placed it. I think they are the only two corrections I need to make. So I toyed with the idea of taking the video down because it was obviously very wrong. Paul convinced me that to leave it up, and Angela said that I should leave it up as well. It sort of shows that it shows the level I'm at, really. And so I put it back up. It did come down for a brief time. I didn't delete it or anything. I just took it offline just briefly. It's back on now though, and we're good to go on that one. That of course was the final build of the Airfix Spitfire. I don't know where I'll put it now, but we finished that with Spitfire. It's about somewhere. So I thought what we'd do this week, you just have to excuse me while I lubricate my throat. I've got a really sore, it's not a sore throat, I've got something going on and it hurts when I talk. So we're going to look at seams and filling. So first of all, if ever you come across a kit that's incomplete, or for whatever reason you don't like it or you don't want it and you're going to throw it out, hold steady and just think to yourself, could I use that as a test bed, a test piece? They're called paint mules. So basically I built this last week. I got it out of it. It's an Airfix kit, and it's the Lightning. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, half the parts are missing out the box where it's Airfix. So I don't know. So I've put together what there is. I mean, there's no, that's literally all there is. The seat's not complete in there and everything else, but and it will do fine as a test piece. So one of the first things that I come across was there is a gaping chasm between the wing and the fuselage. This area we're looking at is called the wing root. And I'm just going to bring that up. And I'm just going to have to adjust the lighting a little bit. Might have to turn it down to one light. Let me just check which side it is. Right, it's probably that side there. Right, so let me just stick with me a minute while I fiddle about and try and. So there we go. Right, you can see that huge gaping hole there. So that needs to be filled because planes don't fly around with wings half detached, unless of course they're falling off or something else like that. So that needs filling. So what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to go through a few sort of types of filling that people do. Again, disclaimer, I'm not a professional modeler. This is only basic level, so I'm not going to be covering the, I don't know, the latest UV light sealing, you know, demonstration or anything like that. Yes, they're out there. I've seen them out at Telford. You can get these funny little pens that you should put your glue or whatever in, and then you go along with a UV light and it seals it all, look like new. I I don't think they're a new product, but it's the second time I've seen them. The first time I heard of them was a while ago, but it's the first time I've seen them. Anyway, I digress. So, methods of sealing. There are a few. There are three that I can show, well, or talk. There's three I'm going to talk about. The first is cement. Not cement you use on buildings or anything like that, I might add. We're talking about Revel, Contactor, Professional Cement, that sort of thing. And all you can do with that is you just go along the seam very slowly, pour in the cement into the join till you get to the end, and then you leave it. Some people like to use a hairdryer on it to speed up the drying process. Inevitably, it will sink into the join, and you'll have to come back and go over it again once that's dried. And you'll have to keep doing that until you've got it level or just above the wing or the fuselage. From that point on, you will have to sand it back with one of these sanders. Again, I use UMP sanders for all my sanding needs. They are very, very good, and they have a huge range. And in fact, I've just brought out some new ones. So for me, I would use a thinny stick, something like this. Perhaps not that grit straight away. Depends how resilient the glue is, but I might use a coarser one just to begin with. I'm not exactly sure what one that is. That's quite coarse, but very lightly, and just sand it back until you've got a nice flush seam. So, and that's what you do with that. One of the more popular methods is to use similar sort of setup, but to use a super glue. And what you can do with the super glue is you can pour it out onto your desired surface, a little mixing tray or something like that. And then you can mix in some chalk or talcum powder. You can mix in coloured chalk, whatever your colour preference is. And then same thing, but using maybe a cocktail stick or something. You run along the edge there and you put the super glue over the top. Exactly the same process as with this, but with super glue. Now then, unfortunately, I forgot to mention what the masking tape is for. So I'm just going to cover that quickly. So the masking tape. Kits generally have an awful lot of detail everywhere, all over the wings, and you want to retain as much of that detail as possible. If I was to take these strips off and then go and fill that seam, I can tell you that the glue, the super glue, the filler, whatever I choose to use would probably get all spattered all the way along where this strip is. And what would happen then is I would come along with my sanding stick and start sanding, and no matter how careful I am, I would inevitably erase detail along this area here. We don't want to do that, so I put these down as protection. Once I've finished filling and it's dried, I will remove them, or I'll perhaps sand first and see how it goes, and then remove them at the end, and all my details should be left intact. This side's been done already. I done this yesterday. I think it was yesterday. So that I've got one to show you after we've filled this. We are going to fill this, which we're going to crack on with now. Just need to keep an eye on the time. So I'm going to use filler. I'm going to use two things, filler and tet, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now,
What's tet?
tet is Tamiya extra thin cement. Everyone in the trade or in the business knows it as tet. It's just obviously the abbreviation. They do their standard one. They're all different types of tet, or different types of Tamiya. So let me just grab. Let me get the right ones down. There are more in the range, but for the moment, I've got. This is their standard stuff, Tamiya extra thin. This is the tet, and it's used for, you know, bonding styrene together and things like that. It's very good. Then they brought out more recently Tamiya extra thin cement quick setting. Now this stuff dries rapidly, and you know, it's very quick at drying. You've got to place it on your piece and connect the two pieces together very quickly, otherwise it just evaporates.
How quickly? Seconds, minutes?
Well, I'll tell you what, I will endeavour to show. Let me get a piece of plastic. I need a piece of, oh, I can use it on this, as this is a test piece. So I don't know whether this is going to show very well. So what we'll do is we'll put the Tamiya extra thin, the standard stuff. I'm going to put a drop on. Let me just want to see whether I can get, whether you can see this. It might not work, it might. So let's see. So if I put a drop there, no, it's not going to see. Let me. There it is. So it's at the top there. That is quite a bit of tet. So just below it, I'm going to put the extra and there's the right next to it. You can see it evaporating even as I speak. That was a considerable amount. Let me try again. If you watch where the brush touches, you'll see it more or less dry up straight away. So there we go. There we go, and it's dried off. Yeah, that's dried off them too, and that one's still wet. So they're dry already. That one's not. It's very rapid. Anyway, back to the topic in hand. So, what I tend to use are these little caps that I buy, and I get them with the little medicine cups. So I buy 100 of these little medicine cups, and then every now and then I'll get 100 of these caps as well. The caps go down a lot slower than the medicine cups. I'm always using those. I only rarely use these for a bit of mixing every now and then. So today I'm going to use Humbrol model thinner. So what you'll need to get is obviously something to mix it on. Try not to use cardboard, or because it will drain any fluid away from the filler. and we want to keep it workable for as long as possible. And then you'll need some form of application device. So I'm just going to use a toothpick. We're going to deposit, I don't know, maybe like a large pea-sized amount on this. Now this stuff dries fairly rapidly, so it's quite difficult to work with when it comes straight out of the tube. In its state like that, it's a bit like it's not quite water. It's like a thick paste, almost like maybe toothpaste, but we want it a little bit more fluid-like than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix Tamiya Extra Thin with it, and it's literally a case of applying quite large drops to the surface. Sometimes the brush doesn't pick anything up. And because I'm using the normal Tamiya Extra Thin, it will keep the filler workable for much longer than it would have been. You can use the quick dry stuff, but obviously it won't last as long. It will dry up more quickly. So now we've got a much more workable, I don't know what consistency that is really now. It's still going to dry fairly quickly though. So then you just get your an amount on the, I'm going to try and do this for me. I normally work a lot closer. So, and then basically just run that along. Don't worry about what it looks like. You're not in an art class or anything like that. You've got protection down on your model surface, so you don't need to worry about what's happening there. And then just push it into the wing root, and then come along and just using the edge of the toothpick, just push that down so that you get a nice rounded corner going into the fuselage.
I would like to say hello to Sam.
Who would?
I would. He always says he's watching. So tonight I'm saying hello, Sam.
There we go. And then what we can do is just to help smooth it out a bit, just run some more Tamiya Extra Thin along the corner, so you're almost treating it like putty in a window. Might have been better to pour a bit out and not use the brush applicator, but there we go.
Okay, Tim. Hello, Tim.
And then there we go. So and that's our wing root done there. I don't know if you can see now that the line is filled, and we've got a nice rounded corner where we've just sort of gone along, pushed that down and just slid that back to give us a nice rounded section there. And then what you'd normally do is you'd have the other side masked off and you'd go around and do the back as well. You can see the line on the back. I'm not doing them because I'll keep them for other times when I need to demonstrate wing root being filled. So once that's done, you need to really leave that. And I would say, I mean, the box says you can leave it for, what are we saying on the box? No, I can't. It's I think it's something like a few hours, 6 hours, something like that, 6 to 12 hours. I personally would leave it for a couple of days. Couple of days at the most, just so that it really goes off and cures, and then you should be good to go. If you go too soon, all you're going to do, it's just all going to fall apart, and it's not going to look right. So you really need to give it time to set. And so what will it look like when it's done? Well, here's one I prepared earlier, all Blue Peter style. We've got one there. So that's what it will look like when it's cured. There are many different types. I mean, this is just the model filler for Humbrol. Vallejo do a very good one, I'm told, with a very good applicator for thinner lines. There's putty, Perfect Putty, I think it's called. There are so many different fillers, it's unbelievable. But this is just one, and that's so it normally goes a sort of off-white colour, depending on obviously what you're using. I think there's a very good one called Bondi, and I think it's red in colour. And I hear good things about that, but I've never tried it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come along and try and clear some of this gunk away just off the surface. I think pretty much okay to take these off. Yeah, let's take that one off. Let me just, yeah, we're going to be okay to take that off. That's okay. Just wanted to double check. So what I've done is I've pulled the tape away. I've left there's a little bit exposed there that I could come in with the UMP thinny stick that I intend to use, and I've just tilted that at a sort of 45-degree angle and just gone into that corner. So I'm literally just sanding this corner in the wing root, nowhere else. So as always, I want to keep that, retain as much as I can of that detail. That is vital that we don't lose that or in any way encroach on that. We're just slightly catching above there, so I'm just going to see if I can lightly scrape with the blade facing away. That's it. I just want to lightly scrape. Be careful because you don't want to scrape into the join, because you're just going to remove what you've put in. Let me take that off and just see what I'm working with. Same problem, like with the tape on, you can't really see what it is you need to remove. With experience, you'll get away with putting the tape closer and closer to the join, so that inevitably you're not going to have this little tiny, you've got a little tiny strip, which I don't really want, to be honest, either side. You can see there. So I'm going to come in now and just, using that corner, come back with this small small side. You can see the filler coming away nicely. Again, I'm tilting it so that I'm basically using the front corner of the thinny stick. And this is what's great about these thinny sticks. No other, I mean, definitely not. That's just going to, no. And then you've got these other ones that people use. It's not going to work either. They do some other ones which have a corner on, but I don't think it's too big really for using in this corner. And they're graded, so we'll start with the, I mean, we'll take the bulk of the filler out with this. Using the wrong side, sorry. We'll just use that front corner very gently. We're not pushing down really hard on this. And then we'll just want to come along where this piece is here that's going up the fuselage. And I think that would actually not be too bad at all. So this is what I'm left with at the moment. Now bear in mind, this is not painted yet, this is bare plastic. So what you'll get now is, let me see if I can come over and come in a bit. There we go. Come on, are you going to focus for me?
No more hole.
What?
No more hole.
Yeah, and then so I can tell you that the gap on this side was as bad as the one we've just filled, if not worse. And that's all filled in now. And what will happen is you'll put your primer over the top, and you should be able to tell straight away, because primer shows up all sorts of defects, whether you've got it right or whether you need to go back and do it again. So I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. And that's basically filling a wing root. We've got it slightly missing at the front. Just having a close look, it probably needs a bit more of a angle there. I could probably sand that. It just dropped off slightly in there, but and that is the way you will fill all sorts of holes, gaps, seams. That is the same basic principle in all of that. Now then, so we've filled our wing root. Now, one other thing that's very important that needs to be addressed are seam lines. And what is a seam line? A seam line is where during the manufacturing process, basically the two halves of the mold come together, and the fluid is pumped into the mold, and you're basically left with a little ridge where the two have met. That's one type. You've also got seam lines from where you join two pieces of plastic together. So in this example, we've got a seam line that runs down the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. Now, they don't look bad when they're in this state. When you've just glued them together, there's a very faint line that runs all the way along there. And they don't look too bad when they're just, you've just glued them together. It's, it's a line, but you won't think nothing of it. But once you get paint on there, they are amplified. They look much, much worse. And I don't think you've ever seen a plane that's got a glue line all the way around it. So one of the things we have to do is remove that. Now, this is where it can become a bit tricky depending on the method you use to glue them together. Because if you've only glued them at surface level, once you start sanding away that seam line, eventually you're going to sand away the glue that you put in there to attach the two halves together. So what you really need to do is, when you glue your parts together, make sure you get good contact throughout the whole surface, and that your glue penetrates deep into the recess, and then the two halves come together. Yeah, I know, I can imagine what's going on. So we're going to take this white one to begin with, although that's probably a bit too brutal, but we'll use it lightly. Use it lightly. We've already glued this together, and just very, very lightly yeah, so that's, I'm not really happy with that. That's apologies for the dog. And the dog has just barked outside. Dogs are going mad out the back, unfortunately. So, oh, this is much better one for this. Wow. I'm not very good on knowing what the UMP grits are, or what they're called. I did have them written all down, but I forgot where I put that. But yeah, I would recommend this for seam lines, or certainly as one stage of it. So you just going along there, giving that a nice polish. Might need, I mean, I can tell you that I cannot feel that seam line there, and you will often come across this where you can't feel the seam line, but you can see it. At that point, it's probably best to put a coat of primer over it and see whether the seam line is visible at that stage. If you can see the seam line through the primer, then go back, keep sanding until you've reduced it to nothing.
Matthias says UMP grit is the side effect of Bretton's effect.
All right. So there we've taken care of that particular one, and we're going to follow that back because obviously this needs taken care of as well. And I can see what we've got here. We've come along the back, we're going back across the seam line, but we've got a small area there where it's not quite glued to the front edge. I don't know if you can see that. It's like a dark shadow just there where the glue is not quite. Now what we can do with that is, in some instances, you can get your extra quick setting and just run it along that area there where it hasn't quite glued properly. You don't want to go too far or put too much down because it will reopen areas that were glued, and then just pinch it together. I know why this didn't, because it was an awkward seam, it was an awkward thing to clamp here. Yeah. So in this instance, I already know that that is going to need a tiny bit of filler. Because of where it is, the clamps wouldn't clamp on it properly. They kept slipping off. I tried elastic bands, I tried tape, but no. So what's probably going to happen is I'll just go over it with this. I think this is already set, so I can't use that. I'll go over it and just fill that little gap in there, and then come back in a couple of days and file that down. There is one other method that can be used for filling gaps, and that is to use plastic card. It's a plastic card or styrene sheets or styrene, lengths of styrene at different sort of thicknesses. You can cut them to your desired length and just slot them into the gap, and then put copious amounts of glue over the top, and it'll all sort of come together, and then you just sand over the top of it, and it all becomes one. Finally, one final method that you can use is sprue goo. And sprue goo is a wonderful thing that was invented to help modelers, and it's basically another type of filler, but it's homemade. So what I normally do is, when you make sprue goo, when you get these bottles of Tamiya Extra Thin, when you come to the end, you're normally left with, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch sat at the bottom. Now you can extend the brush slightly to use it all up, but what I tend to do is keep it, collect it until I've got about just over 1/4 of a jar of the stuff, and then you can use your old bits of sprue, just cut them into small pieces, the bits that you normally throw away, and drop them into your sprue goo jar, which you label obviously. And basically,
Bob wants to know, does TET make sprue glue?
does TET make sprue glue?
Yeah, that's his question.
Well, TET and plastic make sprue glue. So you're using the TET glue and you're adding plastic to it. The glue melts the plastic down, and you reach a point where you put enough plastic in that you end up with this sort of thick, gloopy mixture. That's probably a bit too runny as it is at the moment. I don't know. Can they see that? Yeah. You really want it so that you can pull the brush out and you can have a drop of the sprue glue and it will just sit at the end. It won't actually fall off. As mine is at the moment, yeah, that's dripping off. So that's probably needs, in that case, I would snip a little bit more plastic.
Yep, Bob said, what ratio would you use?
Well, as I just said, a quarter, maybe quarter of a bottle of. It's no, I don't have a set ratio. I just go in and I will snip quite a bit of plastic. I'll put it in and then I'll leave it for a few hours and then come back and have a look. And all you do is you put some in, maybe half of what so if you've got, so for example, if you've got half a bottle of TET, I would perhaps put quarter of a bottle of plastic parts in, leave it, come back and have a look. If it's dripping freely off the brush, cut yourself some more plastic, put it in, leave it another day or so, come back, check it again. If you pull the brush out and it's all like thick plasticine or glue tack or something, then it's you need much more glue added to it, and that's how you do the sprue glue. And the difference is with that, the sprue glue, you can, if you only build a certain type, if you only use Airfix, for example, you could just use their plastic, and then your sprue glue will dry just like Airfix plastic. So you could, in theory, if you're really anal about it, you could have a sprue glue for Hasegawa, a sprue glue for Airfix, a sprue glue for Tamiya, and all of them would dry slightly different color to their corresponding sort of plastics. So that said, the big drawback with sprue glue, as good as it is, it dries immensely strong, and you can file it and everything else like that. The downside is it takes a long time to dry. If you use it to fill a gap, you need to wait days for this stuff to set. You might even be looking at a week, maybe more, depending on how much you've used, how deep you've had to go. It's yeah, that's a big drawback with it, but it is very good stuff. And because it's in that sort of semi-liquid form, it will sort of permeate into spaces and sort of almost self-level itself. So it's fantastic for that. But yeah, you make that yourself. You don't buy that, you make that yourself. So we've actually finished a little bit earlier than normal tonight. So does anybody have any questions?
Basically what I've been asking about sprue glue. Chat's a bit livelier tonight.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Is everyone happy with how the show's going?
I think so.
That's good. That's important. I don't know what we'll be tackling next week yet. I haven't thought that far ahead, but
They're all saying we should swap places.
swap places.
Yep, you should be doing chat and I should be doing that.
All right.
Yeah. My sentiments exactly.
Am I doing that bad a job at it?
No.
All right. Okay. Don't really know what to say about that.
Bob says he needs to get some tech sprue glue, but where from?
Excellent. Yeah. Very funny.
Great midweek fun. Good job, Sprue dude.
Okay. Well,
What plastic do I use for that glue thing?
just any model plastic will do fine. Or you can buy the styrene in the stores. I believe you can use that as well. I've never used it myself, but I understand you can.
Hangout says great show.
Thanks, Paul.
He wasn't sending it to you, he sent it to me.
Oh, right. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, then. Well, that's that for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you did.
Just before you leave, Matt Hall. My first time to find this, found it's been very entertaining and useful for new modelers like me. How often do you broadcast?
Was that Matt Hall?
Matt Hall.
All right. Okay, Matt. Nice of you to drop in. This is exactly what the show is for. People like you that are just starting, or you know, this is just what I wanted it to do. So it's on every Wednesday at 8:30. It's only on for an hour at the moment, but obviously we'll see it, play it by ear as things go. But at the moment, it's on for an hour every Wednesday at 8:30, and yeah, we cover all sorts. If you can go, they're all logged, I believe, so you can go back and watch some of them and watch some of the colossal muck-ups I made, especially last week's.
He's coming back tomorrow.
So good. I mean, how long have you been away from modelling?
Subscribe.
Excellent. And obviously you want to join, I would recommend joining ISM.
Is it the ISM that does on a Friday?
Yeah, ISM do the show on a Friday. They do the big show. That's nothing to do with me. But I would highly recommend joining their forum. It's very, very busy. And there's a whole wealth of information there. Certainly worth subscribing to them as well.
He's been modelling for 30 years.
Wow, not a beginner then. Anyway, I am going to shoot off now. So again, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.